Okay. So Anthony Bonavita, I've had your bio up. I was telling the class about our relationship and how we met at Stony Brook a number of years ago, and through obviously Dr. Laskowski, and they are good friends of St. John's. You know, you can go on from there. The stage is yours. You can do the sharing of the content when you're ready, and believe it or not, I'm going to actually make myself shut up for a change.
Well, great. Well, great that you're going to shut up. Great to be here with you all this morning. If you can help me just understand a little bit of etiquette here. You know, obviously I'm used to in person, and so this is going to be a unique experience for me, but not sure how, if there's any questions, how that would ultimately come through, or just wait to the end. Like, how do you normally run these, Jim?
We've had it both ways, Anthony. We've had students that when there's a break in your speech or in your sentences, in between sentences, if they have a question, they just usually chime in, and you can answer it, and we can go off on another discussion, or we can, you know, we can wait till the end. However you want it is fine.
Well, great. I would prefer, if you have a question, just chime in. I'm going to try to shut up every so often.
Okay.
So, you know, if you have a question, let's chime in. I would love to make this an active dialogue. Hopefully you can see the screen that I shared.
Okay, it's the front of the Gund Arena, is it, or something?
Yeah, it's the front of our building.
Okay.
So you can see that, right?
We got it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yep.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to participate here this morning. As I said, this is going to be a unique experience, so please try to be interactive and ask questions and call BS or whatever you want to do throughout this you know, next little bit. We're going to spend some time together. If something doesn't work, it's not my fault. It's my assistant's fault. If everything goes well, then I did it myself. So make sure you remember, always blame others is the first lesson of the day. Well, good morning again. My name is Anthony Bonavita. I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. As Dr. Riordan stated, let me start. My goals here today go through a couple of things. Jim asked me to explain my journey, and really my journey is not for me to stand here and tell you about myself, even though I do enjoy talking about myself. That it's really just about you and how you can take tidbits of where I came from and apply them to where you are, and hopefully it inspires you or motivates you in a certain direction. That's my goal throughout this entire program, is talk about how this can help all of you in your own personal growth and journey. So I'll start with my journey. I'm a very open and candid individual. I'll share a lot about my family, about where I come from. I think everything makes me who I am today. And so every piece of this is a part of what has me standing here in front of all of you. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about my team in Cleveland. I've been here 10 years, but we'll get into that. And we have obviously seen a lot over the 10 years. I appreciate you all responding back on the leadership question. We'll get into talking about that as we get towards the end. And really, that's the focus of the meeting, of the program here. And then we'll talk about your journey, and I want to understand, you know, any of you that are willing to share where you are and how I can help you in your own journeys moving forward. So hopefully that helps. If anybody has any questions right now, I'll answer them, but if not, we can get going. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I had two brothers. My dad was a carpenter and a contractor. That evil-looking thing between the taller kid and the smaller kid is me in the red. I was always up to something, always you know, into trouble. You know, I was definitely the ones that you know, caused my parents to lose patience in their hair. My younger brother Matthew is the saint, and the one that everybody loves. I was the one that everybody thought was going to go to jail. And so, you know, it was, and there were definitely moments along the way. But I show this to you because obviously like all of you, your families are important. But my parents were very, very inspirational to me, and I didn't realize that until I was in my 30s. And those of you that are in your early 20s, and wait till you get to 30, you'll be surprised at how smart your parents become. Mark Twain stated that he thought his parents were really stupid when he was 18, and when he turned 30, he was amazed at how much they had learned, which means we grow and mature. We understand them more. But I recognize now, and certainly now as a parent, things they tried to teach me back then were really trying to put me in a position to be successful in life. But most importantly, they taught me about people. My dad owned a small business, worked extremely hard, treated everyone fairly and equitably, broke people's chops like you would not believe. But it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter whether you were a client or somebody that worked for him. He treated you the same way. And so as I've gone on in my life, that was instilled in me, and I think it's really helped me, get to where I am today. Is about treating people right and treating people fairly and equitably, and understanding the differences between us. And we grew up in a very Italian and Jewish neighborhood, but we also had influences from other cultures, because my parents put us in that position. And so it really is, again, about where I am right now as a parent, trying to understand how I can make sure that my children get the same type of exposure and understanding of people, as opposed to just staying in their lane with a group of people that they work with or around every single day. My dad also had the courage to quit a job and not work for a bad individual, which and back then that was really difficult for him to do. He had two boys and one on the way, and just came home one day and said to my mother that he really didn't want to work for this person anymore because he had no integrity and didn't want to be around this guy. So he quit, and he put an ad in what was then the Penny Saver. So it's like posting it on Twitter or LinkedIn, and that's how he started his business. And for 35 years from there, had a pretty successful business, and he never really stopped. We never really forgot where he came from. That's the one thing I will say about my dad, and I miss him, greatly. Is he just never forgot where he came from, and no matter what, no matter how successful he became, he always remembered that he grew up in Brooklyn. That he was, his goal in life was to treat people well. He also took time, which is something that in sports we don't get a lot to do, and it's interesting to see where we are from the situation that we're all dealing with right now. People probably look at me in my position and go, it's a pretty cake job, and I assure you that there are moments where it's pretty great to be in a position like this, right? That you get to experience championships and do some really cool stuff. But we work really hard, and I spend a lot of hours, at work. I have two little boys that are 8 and 10, and nights and weekends and things like that, and I haven't done any of the stuff my dad has done or did for us, whether coach my baseball team or act with me in a church play or do any of that stuff. I haven't done any of it because I work in sports and I work in entertainment, and all of that happens at night and on the weekends, and and I don't get that opportunity. I mean, now that we've been in this situation the last 4 months, it's been interesting, to be part of their lives more, be in their lives more daily, and so yes, there's definitely some challenges about where we are right now, but I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to get to really engage with my boys at a higher level than I would have. But my dad, did all those things because that's what he valued most, his family. I was a bad student. I was a bad student. I had no discipline, really, is what it came down to. My dad told me I could play baseball. I was pretty good, and if I applied myself, and I didn't. My mother used to call me a ne'er-do-well, which means that I was good enough to do well, but I got close to it, but never really achieved it. So out of high school, I thought I was going to go work for my dad and start building up his business. And one of the lessons that he taught me was that it doesn't matter who you are. Like, it doesn't matter that you're the son or the father, the owner of the business. Really, you have to earn respect. And so he made me start from the bottom, sweeping up job sites and doing things that, carrying sheetrock up 5 flights of stairs. And if any of you picked up a piece of sheetrock, how heavy it is. And so I decided that wasn't for me. I wanted to go back to school, and I really didn't do well in high school. I didn't apply myself. I was a C-level student, and so I had to go to a junior college to kind of get my grades up in order to really try to get into a full 4-year school. So I did that. I went up to Sullivan County, New York, which when you're from Brooklyn, New York, might as well be a different country. It was probably 2.5 or 3 hours away from my house, but it literally could have been on the other side of the Atlantic, as far as I was concerned. And you don't realize why you make some of the decisions you make. You don't realize how you wake up one day and say, I'm going to do this, and you just do it, and then you look back on it and you go, wow, that was a really powerful moment in my life. And that's really what it came down to for me. Was I just decided to go to Sullivan County Community College in upstate New York. And and I don't know why to this day that I made that decision, but I did. And it was the best decision I made because it got me out of Brooklyn. It got me out of being close to getting in trouble. People around me were getting in trouble, and it was only a matter of time before my luck ran out, and because I was going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so I made the decision to go up there. I spent 1.5 years there getting some credits, and then I ultimately transferred out to Stony Brook University on Long Island. Again, just not really sure why you make the decisions that you make. I went out to Stony Brook to play baseball. Didn't really, ever get a chance to do that because I didn't want to apply myself. Once I got there, I realized that there was, other things to do and fraternities and other things that really were more important to me. And so I never played baseball, which to this day I regret because I really loved the game and would have enjoyed the moment. But while I was at Stony Brook, I got involved in a fraternity, which sounds like it's a bad idea. It was on many levels. Certainly didn't do well academically, had my issues there. But what it did was it brought me to the athletic department. And we were trying to sponsor the basketball games or get people to go to the games, and we were doing a fundraising thing with the athletic department. Stony Brook at that time, when Jim was saying Dr. Laskowski was the athletic director, he was brought there to take the school to Division I. So they were a Division III program when I got there, and then the transition to Division I. So they hired some new people. They had some people in marketing and sales, and I went in one day to meet with them, and this guy by the name of Greg Economo, who Greg has gone on to be all over the place. He's with the Charlotte Bobcats. He was at the MBA league office. He was the number 3 guy at Ticketmaster. He's been all over the place. Another guy by the name of Rick Cole, who Rick is now the athletic director at Oxford University, were there. And I was talking about what we were going to do from a fraternity standpoint, and they offered me an internship in marketing. And I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. And, so I accepted the internship and did a year working with them in marketing. And the year was over, and they were going to renew it, or I was going to have to move on. And Greg and Rick sat me down and told me how terrible I was in marketing. I wasn't really good at it. And that really my mind was more geared towards operations and, facilities, and I didn't know what they meant. And Greg had played basketball at the University of Connecticut. But he took me up to Connecticut to meet the people who ran the facilities up in Connecticut and showed me what they do and how they, do what they do every day. And I realized that there was a lot of correlation to my background, growing up in construction and how things, my father was very handy, I was very handy, how things go together and processes, et cetera. And so we came back to Stony Brook, and it gave me an opportunity to meet the facilities director at Stony Brook. They were building, getting ready to build a football stadium, which you see in the middle of the screen. And she gave me a job as an event manager. Working on the events and setting up the events and things like that. Again, not sure why or how or you make these decisions or people come into your life, but when they do, you need to accept their help and you need to do the best that you can with what they provide, with that opportunity. So I went to work on the facility side. We built this football stadium. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was involved in these meetings and was engaged in the process. And you just fast forward over 13 years I spent there. The lady that hired me wound up retiring. I became the assistant athletic director for facility operations and overseeing all the facilities and day-to-day. And through that time at Stony Brook, there was a lot of moments there that, again, put me on the path to where I am today. And it's really not always the people that you think it's going to be. It's not always the friend. It's not always somebody that you're like, that's my buddy, he's going to take care of me. This was actually somebody that I disagreed with. This was a gentleman who I didn't think worked very hard. I would talk about him behind his back. I would do all the things that a 23-year-old kid would do. And Norm Berhanen, his name was, the facility manager, introduced me to an organization called the IAVM. At the time, it was the IAAM. And I started to research what it was. And again, you have to understand it's 1996 or whatever. So, Google and all that stuff wasn't available. And you had to, call and they sent you a brochure. And so I got involved in the IAVM. I wound up going to venue management school in Wheeling, West Virginia. So again, to reset this, Brooklyn, New York, upstate New York, Long Island, New York, and now I'm sitting in a classroom in Wheeling, West Virginia for a week learning about facility management. It was definitely overwhelming for me because I was a fish out of water. But as I sat through that school, it's 2 years, so you got 1 week each year, and it gives you, not a degree, but it gives you a certificate that then you can apply. Ultimately, what I became was a CVE, which is Certified Venue Executive. But as I sat there were 3 goals that I knew I wanted to accomplish while I was sitting there over the next, 10 years of my life. One was to become a Certified Venue Executive. The other was to go work in professional sports. And the third one was to go back and teach at VMS, Venue Management School. So that was roughly around 2000, 2001. Within the 10-year frame from 2000 to 2010, I accomplished those goals. Because right after that program, I came back to Stony Brook and we had a new athletic director, and he was a hard-charging guy. And sometimes in life you just don't really mesh with people. And I knew that working for this guy was going to be a challenge for me. And so I was open to opportunities, and was really pounding the pavement trying to figure out whatever opportunities I could find. And really, I'm sure Jim has talked about this in his classes. It's about relationships. And today, again, no offense to you all, but with LinkedIn, it's a little bit easier to make connections with people. You just make the connection, and then it's there, electronically. If back then you had to try to get to know people and interact with people. So there were some influential people in the industry that I got a chance to interact with, that got to know, and never knew that they were going to be able to help me because of that program. And so the phone rings one day. I'm sitting in my office at Stony Brook, and this guy by the name of Carl Hirsch, who's well regarded in our industry, told me he had an opportunity for me, and that the opportunity was in San Antonio, Texas. And so you imagine the fear of going to Texas. I was married 10 months. My wife had a job at Stony Brook, and we were pretty good. We were set. Stony Brook's a state school. It's got good retirement program and all that stuff. But I knew deep down that I needed to do this. I knew deep down that I needed to give this a chance. And I was just fortunate enough to have a partner with me that allowed me that opportunity. She said, if your dreams take us to San Antonio, Texas, then we got to go to San Antonio, Texas. And next thing I know, we were packing up the house and the 2 cats, and the cats were not mine, and moving to San Antonio, Texas. And great experience. The whole drive, the whole getting there, all of it was a pretty cool experience. If those of you have never packed up your car and moved anywhere, or moved across the country, or moved even to go to school, it's a pretty exciting experience. We really enjoyed it. It was just an unbelievable time in our lives to be, newly married and starting out a new journey. I knew 0 people in San Antonio, Texas, other than the people I was going to work for. Very quickly, we established a small group of people, and were able to, settle in there, which turned out to not be a very, very long time, to be honest. I only wound up being in San Antonio for 2 years. But I learned a lot in San Antonio. Spurs organization is one of the best out there, to this day, and I've been gone a long time. I remember the core values. If you talk about leadership, it's all about values. And in San Antonio, the core values are success, integrity, success, and caring. So you have to have integrity in what you do, in the decisions that you make, the things that, the way you conduct your business. You have to be successful, right? You want to be successful in that. You want to make sure that what you're doing is successful for your team members, your employees, your organization. And then you have to care. What I think we really pushed home was caring about people. And that was really, that resonated with me because I grew up in an environment where my dad and my mom cared about people a lot. So success, integrity, success, and caring were the three core values I learned in San Antonio. And I also made a ton of mistakes. I was young and inexperienced, and I went into the job. They told me that they wanted me to establish discipline. I became the assistant general manager of the AT&T Center, which you see there in the middle of the screen. They wanted me to establish discipline. So I worked directly for the general manager, and I was the number 2 guy. And I definitely did that. I instilled discipline. But I picked on stuff that really didn't matter. I picked on, what people wore or, how much time they took at lunch. And at the end of the day, I've learned that stuff really doesn't matter. As long as they come in and do what they're supposed to do day to day, yes, if somebody's taking advantage of the situation, certainly you need to address it. But I was nitpicking, and I was a pain in the ass. And I really, thought that if I went in hard, which is true, you want to start with more discipline and back off. It's always easier to do that than to go the other way. But I just didn't listen. I wasn't feeling people. I wasn't understanding how I made them feel. And I'll talk a little about that later when we get to leadership. But I made a ton of mistakes in San Antonio, and I regret those mistakes, but they taught me a lot. They taught me about, really listening, active listening. If you haven't heard about active listening, it's an art that I have not mastered. But it's about really paying attention and understanding and listening. We all are writing stuff down, and we all know people who are type or write when we're talking to them. And what I've learned is that you really can't listen. You hear, but you're not really listening. You're not really understanding. You're not really comprehending what somebody's saying. Doesn't mean you can't make a note, but I've tried to learn how to write a note down if I want to come back to someone and say something. I write it down as opposed to interjecting or stopping them from talking. So active listening was one thing that I picked up, from my time in San Antonio, that to this day I continue to try to learn and master. And it's hard to do that, especially as an Italian kid from Brooklyn. Your own, my energy, my level of attention span is not that good. And so I have to battle my own, personal makeup in order to really be active and listening. So San Antonio, I get called up to the president of the organization's office one day, and he asked me, he tells me I'm going to get a call from some guy named Len Komorowski. At the time, I had no idea who he was. He turned out to be the CEO of the Cavs in Rick and Morris Arena at the time, and that they wanted to talk to me about an opportunity here in Cleveland. And I only been to Cleveland one time. It was with a basketball trip with Stony Brook, and I knew nothing about it. And obviously, my wife and I had just had a son, or were having a son, and we just bought a house, and this was not ideal to be picking up and moving to Cleveland. But long story short, obviously, they over the course of a number of months, they offered me the job, and Jackie and I moved to Cleveland, Ohio. We got here in June of 2010. My son Dominic was born in April, and we got here in June of 2010. And in July of 2010, LeBron left to go to Miami. So if you imagine the situation for us, we were sitting in our apartment with boxes all around us, and a 2-month-old, and watching LeBron say he's going to Miami. And so you talk about feeling like you made a bad decision. That that was a moment in time I thought it was over. Like, this is a disaster. I just left one of the best organizations in sports and moved to Cleveland, Ohio. And, you know, one of the reasons I moved here was because they're a good basketball team, and this guy's going to Miami. So, but you'd be surprised how through adversity, that's where you really learn. That's where you really grow. So LeBron leaves, and we have to go through the next season. We lost 26 games in a row. 26 games in a row. It was freaking brutal. Brutal. Kind of come in every day. You imagine coming in every day and trying to inspire people to be greeting our fans, and why people showed up, I have no idea. But we were so bad, it was painful. And we finally won a game, and you thought we won the NBA Finals. I mean, it was unbelievably relieving, because we were the joke of the world. We were going to break the record for the most losses, and we came one loss away from doing that. It was absolutely brutal. But the next year we went into a lockout. So I'm in Cleveland less than 18 months, and I lost the best player in the world, and now we're in the NBA's in a lockout. So in a lockout, what do you think happens? You know, they look for opportunities to cut costs, et cetera, et cetera. So my team and I, you know, really had to learn how to do with less. You know, one thing about Cleveland is that we're very, very good with our means. Like we put money where our mouth is. We put money behind our facilities and our buildings. But back then, we had to do more with less. And that's really tough, especially when you've been operating for a while with more. You know how to operate with more. So to be able to kind of still operate with less really taxed my team, because they were predisposed to having what they wanted when they wanted it. And this was probably the most challenging for them in their career at that point. We got through the lockout, you know, and then, you know, the next couple of years were relatively uneventful when you think about, you know, on a global scale, but we had a lot going on. You know, we have a progressive owner who's opening up a casino here in Cleveland. We were involved in that. There was other things that happened with his businesses that we had to play a role in. And then in July of 2014, the world rights itself again, or at least in my opinion, rights itself again. We just got awarded the Republican National Convention the week before, a few days before, which was a big deal for a city like Cleveland. You know, these events are bringing a lot of exposure and a lot of money to cities. And, you know, regardless of the political aspects of it, especially back then, you know, when we did it, we didn't know who was going to be the candidate. But regardless of that, it's still a really good win for a city like Cleveland specifically, because, again, of all the exposure that it got over that time. And then 4 days later, LeBron announces that he's coming back to Cleveland. And it just, again, was an unbelievable experience, not knowing the emotions, not knowing what to do. I mean, you're literally like running around in a circle. You know, I have no idea what's coming next. People flooded to the building. Why, I have no idea, but they just flooded to the building and were there. And, you know, it was an unbelievable moment. And then the next 4 years were absolutely insane. We did the Republican National Convention, went to 4 NBA Finals. And obviously, you know, in 2016, we got the opportunity to win it. And that change? We got the opportunity to win it. But one of the things that people ask me is what I feel at the moment. What I felt at the moment was fear, and here's why. We were in Cleveland. I didn't go to Golden State. I was in Cleveland. We had about 14,000 people in our facility at that time watching this game on the Jumbotron, on the video board. We had about another 25,000 outside the building. And then people just started coming into downtown. So as being responsible for the safety and security of everybody, I was, you know, not panicked is probably a bad word, but I was concerned, right? There could be a lot that could go wrong here. And we've all seen things that can go wrong in situations like this. And so I needed to make sure that we were good that we were set. And obviously we did that prior to winning, but because we needed to be prepared either way, right? This was game 7. There was no tomorrow. We knew one way or the other this thing was over. And so I needed to be prepared one way or the other, and we needed to be prepared one way or the other. So we were. And we got through the night, and we got through the day without any incidents, and we got through it. But people ask me, like, what do I remember about that night? I remember looking outside and seeing people as far as I could see, in the streets. And then, again, just worrying about whether or not, we were going to have a situation that we couldn't control. So 4 NBA finals, and again, just an unbelievable opportunity. And these are the moments that I was saying to you earlier that I didn't get a chance to really experience with my dad. Well, as a dad, is I'm not coaching baseball. I'm not acting with them in plays and stuff like that. But I get the opportunity to do this. Right? This is where it's all about now for me. Now that they're old enough, now that they can come with me, and my wife is grateful for it too because it's not the house and they come with me as opposed to stay here with her. But this is what it's about. That little guy on the left, number 2 on, that's Luca, and he is a basketball junkie. I mean, he loves it. My wife played Division I basketball, so he gets it from her. He gets his height from me, but he gets his basketball IQ from her. That's not true. She's 5'10", I'm 5'8", so he obviously gets it from her. And he's just a basketball junkie. Dominic's along for the ride. He's not as basketball as Luca is, but he's along for the ride. He loves how things work. So Dominic is autistic, and he loves how things work. And so each of them have their own little unique reasons why they want to come to the office with me. But it's an amazing experience for me to be able to do that. And that's where I get to really feel like my dad for the first time, right? Where I get to experience something with my boys that's about us. So on the left is my team, a lot of the management team here in Cleveland, and I'm going to get into talking about them and about what we do here in Cleveland. But I'm going to take a pause here and drink a glass of water and see if anybody's got any questions. I know that was just my life story, so there's probably not a lot of questions, but if anybody's got anything to say.
Hey, Anthony, this is Steven. Thank you for joining us today. I was actually curious when you were talking about being concerned about the fans outside of the arena. What are some of the steps that you take to ensure security there? I mean, are you setting up staff to make sure everyone's orderly? Like, what exactly goes into that?
Well, great, Stephen. Thanks for the question. So we have a plaza and an area in between. We sit on a property between the Cleveland, well, they're Indians today. I don't know what they'll be in a couple of weeks, but the Cleveland Indians ballpark and our arena are still on the property. There's a plaza there. We already had set up an area out there where we had what was called a fan fest. So we had a bunch of protocols in place to cordon off the property, and we have the same process that you go through if you went through our building. Metal detectors, police. We had obviously a significant amount of resources dedicated from the state to the city, knowing that this was going to be a big night, regardless of what happened on the outcome of it. But there was a lot of planning that went into it. The police obviously do play a major role in downtown, whether it be with their horse unit or their presence in downtown. We had state support. We had everything we needed was provided to us. But we had to have a plan for all of it. We had to have a plan for plaza. We had to have a plan for what happens in front of the building. What are we doing? And I think the best thing that we did, and the best thing that we did was we didn't push, right? If people wanted to stay till 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning or to the next day, we didn't push them. We didn't unnecessarily create chaos, right? And if people in the building wanted to leave, they could leave. If people wanted to party outside, at one point we had to clear the building because we all wanted to go home, but we didn't push. And I think we allowed people to enjoy the moment. And in crowd management, it's always about time, space, energy, and information. So we had the time to prepare. we had the space because we had the plaza, and we have obviously the streets and everything around it, and literally the whole city just shut down. The good thing about a city like Cleveland is it's small enough where, it could shut down for a couple hours and not be absolutely paralyzed. When you go to a city like New York or LA, there are people that have no idea what's going on, right? The Lakers can win this thing, and the people be out at the Staples Center, and people be going out and have no idea this actually happened. And so Cleveland just became, the building just became the epicenter of the city. And so it was able to come down. We were able to shut down, and the cops did a good job of just letting that happen. So time, space, energy, and information. And we got a lot of information out to the fans about what we were going to allow them to do, what we weren't going to allow them to do. We communicated to them on the front end. And I think, we got lucky. At the end of the day, I think people were happy. I worry, I wonder what would happen if it was reversed, and we would have lost or on a bad call. If you follow basketball, the years prior to and after, we had tumultuous situations where we lost the games, whether it be our guy forgetting who's up or bad charge call on LeBron or any of that stuff. I mean, so we had the luxury of winning the game. We had the luxury of people being there. And in anything in life, it's always better to be lucky than good. But we definitely had a plan, and that was a really, really, really long answer to your question. And I'm not sure I even answered it, but I hope I did.
No, that was good. The time, space, energy, and info. I thought that was really insightful. Thank you.
Yeah, those are not I didn't make that stuff up. That's for. I'm gonna make some shit up over the next a little bit. Trust me, but that stuff I didn't make up, Steve. It's really that's a principle in crowd management. I want to talk about my team because I stand here today in front of you humbled as I can get. That I have one of the best teams in sports. They really are an amazing group. I'm fortunate enough to have a group that's been together for a while, and again, I can't tell you how grateful I am for what they do for me every single day. I'm going to break this all down, so don't worry. We're going to get into each subsect. So this is the team. I have 4 direct reports. We have a vice president of booking and events, vice president of operations. We have an open vice president of security and risk management, and a vice president of venue operations, venue experience, and ticket operations. Let's break this down for you. You can understand how this works. So booking events, what the hell does that mean? It means that I'm responsible for bringing in all the concerts and events and revenue into the building. We generate about $23 million a year normally. Hear what I said there? Normally, not right now. In revenue from concerts and events and family truck shows and things like that, and that's my responsibility. And so we have a vice president of booking. Her job is to manage the calendar, but also to actively seek out these events. Obviously, the big shows are a little bit, not easier, but a little bit more streamlined in how we approach them. Whether it be Live Nation or AEG, those are the 2 big promoters out there, and we have great relationships with both. And Brooke really has to just manage the relationship and made it sound like she doesn't do anything. Manage the relationship and make sure it fits in the calendar. But she also has to make sure that we're having a calendar that works. We have obviously the Cavs. We have an AHL hockey team, which in a lot of markets people may think is not a big deal. But here in Cleveland, we actually have a pretty profitable business. It's a good business, and people like hockey, and it works out well for us. And so she's got to manage the schedule to make sure that goes in. Everything goes in and can fit in. We're fortunate enough here in Cleveland to be able to have a system and people that are able to flip the building so we can do double headers. So we'll play a hockey game in the afternoon, like a 1 o'clock start, and then we'll play basketball at night, which is a pretty cool thing to see. If you're ever in town and want to see it, when we're back to doing that, let me know. I'll be happy to have you watch. It's a pretty cool process of people who really know what they're doing, but also know what their responsibility is, how their responsibility impacts the person next to them. So if I don't do my part of it, then Michael or Blair or Andrew, none of you guys can do your job. Right? So I think it's a great teamwork. We've had the same group of people changing over our building for decades. The father, Charlie Bolin, passed away last year, but him and his sons and his grandsons now have all been changing over our building. It's a pretty cool setup that we have here in Cleveland. Brooke and her team, through that, they also book a lot of our special events. Where, we have 365 days in a year. We do about 200 events a year, but it's still a lot of time for us to do, other events, whether it be, banquets or meetings and outside events. Brooke and her team actively seek those out and then execute them, on a daily basis. Matt Miller is our Vice President of Operations. He's got a pretty big job. He's responsible for keeping the lights on day to day, responsible for the changeovers. He's responsible for ensuring that the air conditioning works, that logistics work, deliveries and trucks in and out. He's also responsible for the event execution. So what does that mean? It means his team, through Don Provone, who's our Senior Event Services Manager, make sure that the concerts and all that stuff can work. If you have any experience with this, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'll try to break it down. But, show is coming into town. They send us, it's called a rider, which is, a book full of requirements. And I know those of you may have heard about it, always hear about what the dressing room would look like and whether they want, tofu or sparkling water or something, unique like that. But really, there's a lot of logistics in it, from the planning as it relates to how the stage is set up, how the lights come in, all of that. And Dom and his team, do all the work, the pre-work, and then obviously are here on event days, get it in and get it out. And it really is, a well-orchestrated process. And so Matt, in his lane here, in his purview, oversees, the event services team. And then, yes, sir.
We've had some practice in dealing with riders. We had Dave Rousson 2 weeks ago. Sent us a whole bunch of stuff from, it was a lot of riders, a lot of settlement sheets, talked about that. So we have that, and I would appreciate you definitely talking more about that, if you could. The operations, I've told this to students before. In some buildings, when I was involved years ago, operations meant everything, front of house, back of house. It was setting up the building. It was taking care of your event staffing. Obviously, in today's world, that's been broken down into maybe 3 different departments of guest experience, guest services, everything else. But a lot of times it used to be involved in the operations. It all depended on the building. You could be director of operations and just be in charge of what you have on the screen here now, basically back of the house stuff. You could also be director of operations. When I was in Richmond, or even really in Philly too, where you had to do the front of the house and the back of the house, and you had some lieutenants under you to do the same thing. So just going back and letting the students know that when you say operations, it could mean 2 different things. But again, I would think, and you're the expert in this now, the trend is more, operations is more of a back of the house function as opposed to just being in front of the house. Or maybe of facilities that are still do it the old way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And just for everybody, it's hard for me to see if anybody, I don't know if you guys have a hand raising thing, but if you have a question, just shout it out because it's hard. I can't see everybody, so please feel free. I want this to be an open discussion. The answer to your question is I do know that there's buildings that still have it the other way. We don't really run on a GM level. So when I was in San Antonio, I was the assistant GM, which means I was really the director of operations. But to Jim's point, I oversaw guest experience, guest services, operations, changeover. All those departments reported into me. And then the GM oversaw the booking and the marketing and those aspects of it. So it can be broken down in multiple different ways. In my world, the way when I got here, I'm a process-driven person, and I like to give people a framework to work within, and that's why I wanted to break out and isolate these things. And I really, truly believe, and this is one of the things I wanted to mention to you as a resource, it's an older book at this point, but There's a really powerful book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. It changed my philosophy, not only personally, but also in my approach to management. And really it's about being, having a passion for something. And once you're passionate about it, can you be the best in the world at it? And ultimately that will drive your economic energy. He calls it the flywheel concept. And so you have, what can you be best in the world at? What are you passionate about? What can you then become the best in the world at? And that will drive your economic engine. It doesn't go the other way. You're not going to make money if you're not really good at something. Well, I guess the Kardashians can, but, so Jim Collins, Good to Great, that philosophy really stuck with me. And really the other thing principally talks about is freedom and flexibility within a framework. So providing people a freedom and flexibility within a framework. So me, when I got to Cleveland, the business was really kind of commingled, and there was a lot of uncertainty in my world, in my mind, as to where things fit. So I spent a good amount of time. The first thing I want to back up to is what I didn't do in Cleveland, which I did in San Antonio, was come in as a bulldozer. I didn't come in and just start hammering out things and trying to be a hero. I really tried to have a look, listen, and learn approach. A look, listen, and learn. Really come in and just understand what went well, what was working, what wasn't working, what was important to people, and really have a much more disciplined process coming in than I did when I went to San Antonio. The phone here never rings, by the way. And of course it's ringing right now. So having that process allowed me to take a step back and see, all the things that I felt like Cleveland was doing right. And then ultimately make the good changes that I felt I needed to make. And I was able to do that by dividing out the business, which, was a challenge for people. Getting people to think differently is an unbelievable challenge. And I asked them to think differently about how we were looking at the business. But we broke it out. We broke it out into operations. We broke it out into guest experience. And Jim, to answer your question a little bit further, when I first got here, I broke it out just into that. I had a VP of guest experience and a VP of operations, and then security and guest services and everything rolled in there. But I learned, especially through the people that I had in place, that I needed to break out security on its own. I needed a real higher level focus on it and just sticking it somewhere where, in another department. Our safety and security, as we continue to see in the world, is paramount. And so we cannot do anything without that. So we've really put a focus on the safety and security aspect of our business, so that therefore you see the breakout that it is today. And the ticket operations didn't report into me when I got here, but then actually just a year and a half ago, we realized we had a really phenomenal individual working in that field as a VP of tickets that really had much more capacity and much more ability. And so working with Ron and our team, we merged the teams together, and Ron now oversees our guest experience group and the ticket operations team. So I'm really grateful for that. I think he's going to be an unbelievable asset for us moving forward. But really that four-legged stool is kind of where I feel most comfortable. But to Jim's point earlier, there's a lot of ways that you can skin the cat. It doesn't really, there's not one way is right or one way is wrong. If you go to places like Madison Square Garden in New York, there's multiple different layers of people. People are really finite on the Knicks, the Rangers, in whatever category they're in, the Liberty. But like people are focused on those things because they have the resources that are able to do it. So hopefully that clears things up. If anybody's got any questions about that, let me know. So operations 2 oversees, we have some other facilities. We have the practice facility that the Cavs play at. We have facilities that our G League team plays at and works out at. We have a hockey team practice facility. We have a warehouse facility that stores all of our merchandise and has our merchandise team out there. Our operations team oversees all those aspects for us and keeps the lights on at all these facilities.
Hey, Anthony, can I just ask one question here, please?
Yeah.
when we're talking about events and when an event is booked and contracted and all that, we've gone over that. In your situation, looking at the chart that you have here, when the contract is done and the rider comes in, does it come to your director of operations and then it moves down to your event coordinators like, well, there's a vacant one now, or Antonia? Well, not so much. Like an event man, like who gets the rider and distribute it to the different people in the area? Like at Nassau Coliseum, we used to give, copies to the Teamsters, to the carpenters, to all the staff in terms of move-in and setup and all that. I didn't know if you were going to get to that. If you are, forgive me for asking, but.
No, I wasn't going to get into this level of detail. I am happy to. Again, I figured I'd put these up and talk about the team, and we can dig in where I want to dig in. So let me back up and answer your question. It could probably go to a couple people. It may go to our VP of booking, but again, our relationships are so strong with Live Nation and AEG that Don Pavone, who's our event services manager, has the relationship, so he may get the rider before anybody because he knows who the road manager is, or he knows who's advancing the show, and so he may get it before anybody. And then, regardless of that, his job is to make sure everybody gets what they need. So Don will send the rider to security. He will send it to food service, which is Aramark for us. He will send it to box office. He will distribute it to everyone, so that everybody understands what their responsibilities are, because everyone plays a role. Merchandise, like I said, box office, ticket operations, which is the same thing, retail operations, our vet crew obviously needs to set things up. Dom and his team are responsible for distributing that information once we have it baked and ready to go. And then as we get closer to events, shows, they have an operations meeting on a weekly basis that goes through all the aspects of the event, call times, when the doors are going to open. Is there GA doors? Is there a meet and greet? Is there this? Is there that? Is there an after party? They go through all the minutiae details and then work out all the logistics that are associated with it. Because the other thing you have to keep in mind is that we always have to be thinking ahead. And so when we're in a show or we're in a basketball game, there's always a level of anxiety, because we need to break that basketball game down and be able to get ready for the show to come in. And so they're responsible for ensuring that we have enough time and abilities to kind of turn things around when we need to. And so the planning and execution of it lies heavily on the event services group. They're the ones that are the epicenter of what we do. I hope that answered the question.
It does. Thank you. And I'm going to shut up after this to let you continue on your plan. But we also talked about the importance being, when you say time and allowing the conversion to happen after events, that's where it's so important, where the operations people know what the booking people are doing and the sales people in terms of bringing in events, and so that there is enough time to convert. I told a story once where we almost lost a flyer game because we didn't have enough time to convert from a tractor pull at the Spectrum. And Ed Snyder went absolutely nuts and said, don't ever do that again. And people like, and I wouldn't say it, but Ed Rubenstein almost lost his job over it. But so it's always important to have that relationship between marketing and operations and booking and all that. Again, back in the day when the fossil days when I was doing it, there wasn't always that cooperation. All right, I am going to shut up now and let you continue.
No, well, please ask whatever you want. I want to make sure that I provide the group with what we need. I put a framework here of what I thought we should talk about, but this is not about me. It's about all of you. So please, ask whatever you want to ask. But I would say this, that the good thing about the group is that they all report in the same place, which is helpful. But it doesn't, regardless of where a reporting structure is, communication is a contact sport. And in today's world, right, at least where we are right now, the contact is not obviously in person. It's this way. But I have hammered home that they need to communicate between each other. I'm not going to tell them how to do it. I am not going to monitor it. I'm not going to babysit them. But they're going to make sure that they're communicating on a daily basis, whenever they need to, in order to make things happen. So what practice that I've tried to do is, if I have something that comes into me that I want to share, if Jim Riordan or anybody sends me an article or something that has something to do with venue security, for example, I send it to all my direct reports. Why do I do that? Because there may be a tidbit of information in there that they could all take from this. It could help them in there, and they also understand why, our security team may be looking at something different because they got something from me that makes them think that I want them to go this way, or this is a product that I want them to look at, or whatever. So I try really hard to be inclusive and to keep everybody on the same page. I don't care if you don't want to read it, just delete it. But at the end of the day, I'm sending it to all of you so that you all understand that this is one team. We all have one mission and one goal. And again, communication is a contact sport. I'm a big believer in getting your ass up, walking over and seeing somebody, which I know is a challenge in today's world. And believe me, my wife will text me from upstairs, so I get it. I get it. But, I'm just a big believer in it, and that's why I think this is such an uncomfortable environment for somebody like me, because I'm used to being around people. I'm going to be honest, I hate people. I literally hate people. I think people are crazy and disrespectful and all that stuff. And when you work in the entertainment business for as long as I have, you realize that people are just very selfish. And so I hate people as a general rule, but I love the people around me. I love my team, and I love interacting with them. And so that inspires me and drives me every day. So this has been a challenge for the last 4 months. The communication, we have a call with everyone, that you saw on the org chart, Tuesdays and Thursdays every week. Why do I do that? It's painful some days because no one wants to talk. It's dragging by the hair to make them talk. But I just want the communication to continue to be there, and it's the only way I know how in today's environment. So, long-winded way of saying that communication is really key here, and communication is a context. Any questions? All right. So safety and security. Again, as I mentioned, very, very critical to what we do every day. We do everything in-house. So all the security, guest services, housekeeping, it's all in-house. We don't have any contracted services. So those of you that may be working in different ballparks or arenas and, athletic departments, you may be used to dealing with the CSC or some other group. We don't have that. We do everything in-house. And what do I mean by risk management? I don't know how much you get into risk management here, but in the course, but that's one thing that I think we have to do a much better job of. We don't look at the risk that we're taking on day to day, and I mean in everything that we do. We have a fleet of vehicles that our team members use, like my team specifically, between box trucks and pickup trucks and SUVs that we go to use to pick up our ownership group when they fly into town. We have people out there driving vehicles and all that stuff, and we're assuming the risk, right? We don't know if so-and-so had, some pops at lunchtime and gets in a vehicle and is driving around and kills somebody. We don't know that, right? So what kind of risk are we taking day to day? And so the reason this position is here is that we want this person to really be focused on our risk holistically. Risk today, in today's world, obviously takes on a whole new meaning. It means cleaning. It means environment, which were important before, but they're certainly much more important now in today's world. None of us are going into a place that doesn't look and feel like it's clean. Doesn't look and feel like it's got the proper procedures to be prepared for us. The hand sanitizer, where the people are actively disinfecting stuff. This is going to be a whole new level here for us as we go through certifications in what's called GBAC, which is the Global Bio Advisory Council, and then well building, which is another program that we're going through that'll establish us as a clean, hygiene friendly, environmental friendly building through our air process, our air purification systems. So this role is going to have a hand in that as it relates to dealing with how we're monitoring that stuff, and what you can say you're doing all these things, but we have to make sure that we're checking them, and this person will have proper protocols in place to be able to check and make sure we do what we say we're going to do. Through the COVID stuff, which we can certainly talk more about, there's been a number of incidents where people have said they were doing something and they really didn't turn out to do it. I remember in Nashville, there was a grocery store, when grocery stores started to open back up, that had a person who tested positive for an employee who tested positive for the virus. And they said they were going to shut down the store, which they did, and then we're going to disinfect it all night and ready for the public in the morning. Well, a news crew parked themselves outside the store, and no one came in it. No one cleaned it. No one went near it. And so the next morning, they got blown up about how they said they were going to do something and didn't do it. So we say we're going to do something, we have to do it. And in order to do that, we have to have somebody in place that's going to check and make sure that we're actually doing it. The venue experiences, as I talked about, Ron came over, oversees our venue experiences. So where does our experience start? I'll shut up for a second and see, is anybody brave enough to chime in and tell me where our experience starts? You're going to go somewhere.
When you get to the parking lot.
You get to the parking lot. Someone else. One more.
I would say probably like when you're purchasing tickets, whether it's online or on the phone or something like that.
Yep, absolutely. Your experience starts the moment you make the decision to purchase that event.
They've been trained in this.
So you're going to be fine. What'd you say, Jim?
We go over this a lot.
Okay.
No, keep going. I like it.
So the moment you make the decision to purchase that ticket is when your experience starts. So the first thing you do, and a lot of us do, is we'll go to our phones now, go to our apps and go there. Obviously, we spend a significant amount of time dealing with our social media and what's out in front, making sure that it's easily accessible for you. That those of you that buy stuff on your phone, which I'm sure a lot of you do, if it's not easy for you to do, you're not going to do it. Just like when somebody asked me to to donate to their fundraiser, if I could do it on my phone and be done with it, I'll do it. The chances increase that I'm going to do it. I can get it done easily. So we've worked really hard to make sure that our process is very streamlined. Once you make a decision, that you can get in to the process quickly and then efficiently and make it and complete the purchase, which is what's important to us, right? To generate the revenue. Your experience starts there. Our team is looking at all that. We don't oversee the digital aspects of our business, but we certainly have influence, and we have processes that we've established on a monthly basis that we talk about our websites and what's out there and our communication and all that stuff as it relates to the brand and the facility. While I work for the Cleveland Cavaliers and we operate and own, we don't own the building, but we operate the building and we control all of it, I'm really responsible for the brand of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And so we spend a lot of time, with our digital team and folks making sure that the brand is where we want it to be. So from that, once you make a decision, then obviously your experience starts. Through two years of construction, which I'll talk to you about here in a few minutes, we obviously had a lot of challenges we had to think through in order to keep the building open. We went through an MBA finals run while we were in construction, and also get people in efficiently and effectively. So there was a lot of information that had to go out in advance. Our team, spent a significant amount of time putting a know before you go, process in place in which obviously gets to people in advance. And so there's a lot of effort that's put into everything that goes into your experience before you even get to our parking lots, before you even get to our door. And then once you get to our doors, obviously then, specifically my team is responsible for your experience. And Ron oversees that from a higher level, but really it's Patrick Scanlon, who really is our senior director of guest experience. He is the guy you want out in front. He is the guy who's going to get down on a knee to a little kid and talk to them at their level. He's a guy who's going to make you feel good. You do not want me in front of guest experience. Even though I oversee it ultimately, I have a bad face. I'll always look angry. I'm never, I'm never going to be the guy that you want out in front. Patrick is the antithesis of that. So as you're going through hiring people and establishing a team around you, just remember that you want people around you that compliment you, that challenge you, that are different than you. You do not want all of you. Trust me. I don't care who you are. It certainly would be a very, very, very difficult place to work if everyone was like me. But Patrick compliments me because he's willing to go out and listen to a guest for 25 minutes, bitch about the hot dog. I'm not doing it. I don't have the patience for it, and I just don't have the demeanor for it, and I'm just not going to do it. And so I have to surround myself with people who are going to do that. So Patrick is an unbelievable catch. He's been with us about 9 years, and I'm glad that he's part of our team. You see on the left side is the senior staffing manager. Again, we do everything in-house, so you have someone that's got to coordinate that. Right? All these people are part-time employees. They obviously have to get paid. They have vacation time built up. They have all that stuff. They're in the union, so we have a pretty robust team there. Even outside of the 3 people that you see there, there's a part-time group that helps us that make sure we schedule people. Last thing you want to do is schedule a concert and then not have anybody scheduled from working. That would be a job career-ending situation as well. So we have to have all these processes in place in order to make sure that we can effectively execute everything we have going on. And the box office, ticket operations, our ticket operations is, I know some of you that are on this call work in ticket operations right now, but they have a pretty busy job working with all our properties. In addition to the Cavs and Monsters, we also have esports teams, which are not selling tickets right now, but we have a process there that we may start doing that at a smaller level once we come back. So the ticket operations team has a pretty robust group, plus they have to deal with all the concerts and things that we put through our building. So that's this group. Any questions? And then really this is a smaller subset of the group that really is my core group. My office and the way it's set up is I have my assistant Lisa, and then I have our business manager and our facility architect, right outside my office. All 3 of them right there. This is kind of my support structure. What does that mean? So obviously Lisa is paramount to me. I mean, I can't do anything without Lisa. She coordinates my life on many, many levels. And I am really, really grateful for her. She is, she also has, this is an important position because she also has a pulse of team. People trust her, people talk to her. She doesn't betray their trust with me, but she lets me know if there's something that I should be aware of. If somebody has a struggle or somebody is, dealing with something personally that I could back off, just be aware of it. So she's my little, information gatherer. She knows what's going on with the team, and that people confiding in her, and she can also hold me accountable. She also has complete and open ability to come to my office and tell me I'm full of shit and tell me I was wrong about how I approached something. Literally her first day she told me to F off, which cemented our relationship forever, because she had the courage to tell me when I was wrong. Tim Naso is our business manager. I'm fortunate enough that the organization supports me having my own business manager. We oversee a $25 million operating budget. So I don't know if any of you have to balance your checkbook, but that's pretty difficult to do. And I certainly couldn't do it on my own. And so even though we have a whole finance team that reports into a CFO, I was able to carve out this role, and I'm really grateful to have Tim. And then Michael oversees our facilities architecture, which means that he helps create all what's called CAD drawings. And if you talked about this, I apologize, but CAD drawings that ultimately allow us to do events. It also is LEED certified and is also part of my construction team. So any renovation or anything we do from a facility standpoint, Michael's there and he's on our staff, so he can do things that would cost us money if we had to have somebody draw something or just take a sketch of something. He certainly wasn't leading the redesign of our facility, but he certainly played an active role in that day to day. And so he's like a man of many. He's also my editor. Whenever I'm going to write something or send something publicly, Michael's a really smart guy and uses a lot of big words that I don't know. And so I always send him stuff that he edits. So if you ever get an email from me, not the responses that I sent to you, I actually wrote those myself, but if you get a long letter from me, good chance Michael had something to say about the editing of that letter. And so that leads me into, the one of the pinnacles of my career so far is really being able to lead the transition from Quicken Loans Arena to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, which was, an unbelievable process and an incredible project for me to be part of, really grateful for that opportunity. So Quicken Loans Arena, which was the Gund Arena, which you heard Jim reference earlier when I first got on, opened up in 1990. It was a state-of-the-art building in 1990. It was built pretty well, and they spent the money needed to spend, and it was a good design for 1990. The realities are that obviously things change, and the world changed, and certainly 9/11 and security measures and all these other stuff hurt the building because it changed the way we had to bring our fans in. We had a couple of goals with the transformation, and in totality, what we call a transformation turned out to be a couple of different pockets of money. I'm sure you talk about public versus private partnerships in this class, but two things had to happen here. One, we had to establish a process for renovating or upgrading the infrastructure of the facility. What does that mean? Things like air conditioning, elevators, escalators, back of house equipment, pumps, stuff that keeps the building, bathrooms up and running. And so when they built the building, they built it with funds. They paid it with funds called off of a sin tax, which is basically tax off of alcohol and tobacco. That fund, that tax, was up for renewal in 2013, 14, I forget the years, 2013 or 14. We led a whole campaign to get that tax renewed because we knew that we needed it in order to have the county, who was responsible for the infrastructure upgrades of the facility, pay for those upgrades. Let me back up. We operate the building. We have a lease. It's ultimately through the county, in which we are responsible for capital expenditures, so capital improvements, capital operating expenditures, under $500,000. So anything we want to do for the building, anything that needs to be fixed, anything that happens in the building under $500,000, we're responsible for. But we knew that systems in totality, HVAC, for example, needed to be upgraded. It was over 20 years old. Systems were inefficient, and we needed to upgrade them. That would fall on the county, which the county did not dispute that they had that obligation within the lease. Problem is, they don't have the money for it. So I hit your car, and I say to you, I know it's my fault. I don't have any money. What do you do about that? What can you do about that? You can sue me, but I don't have any money. So what the hell's the difference? We had to actively help make sure the county had this available resource to get us what we needed. And we spent significant amount of time and money campaigning for this because it had to be voted on by the general public. And so yours truly was out on street corners handing out flyers about voting for this specific tax. It wasn't an increase. It was just a continuation of the same tax. If you bought a beer in downtown Cleveland and it cost you $8 today, it's going to cost you $8 tomorrow. There's no increase in tax. It just was a continuation of the tax. Long story short, we were able to get that passed. And it generated about $60 million in infrastructure upgrades for the facility. New roof, new HVAC systems, new bathrooms, I said the roof, new bathrooms, new HVAC, new electrical system. It provided a backbone for us. Then we wanted to renovate the building. We understood that.
I'm sorry, did you put a new ice plant in?
We are. It's actually going in next year.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Just reminded me of that. So then we wanted to renovate the building, which now had to become another process, which we had to establish between the county, city, and us. We sat down with the county and the city, numerous times. We also knew that this was in 2014. We also knew that we had a really good window here to get this done, right? We had just gone to the NBA Finals. LeBron was back. There was no better time for us to ask for this type of support. There was no better time for us to ask for this type of engagement. And so it took a long time, and there's a lot of stops and starts and a lot of things that you would imagine, and I'm sure you talked about with others, walk away from the table. All that stuff happened throughout this process. But we ultimately got to a point where we came up with a deal. $140 million. It was split between the county and the city. They were going to take $70 million of it. And we were going to pick up the other $70 million. So that was good. Problem was we knew the building was going to cost us a hell of a lot more than that. So we went to our ownership group and got approval to spend up to another $45 million on top of what we spent. So in totality, we had the $140 million from the county and the city and our partnership, so the public-private partnership, $140 million. And then Dan kicked in an additional $45 million, which brought us to $185 million. On top of that, we had the sin tax money, which is another $60 million. So what we call the transformation turned out to be roughly $240 million in upgrades. And the reason that we did this, the reason that we didn't try to get a new building is the bones of the building were really good. The location is fantastic. We weren't going to be able to find that anywhere else. We weren't going to be able to do that anywhere else. Plus, if you've talked about construction in this class, you know that today's market, that building an arena like this would cost us 3 times that. Right, when you look at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, they spend $850 million or $900 million in that. So, $250 million, we have a building that's going to last another 25 years. But we felt like it was a really good investment. We understand that there's probably people out there who would call me bullshit on that, and we get that. That we spent $250 million. We felt, which by the way, we put in, $110 million of, and felt like that this was a good deal, for us to be able to, for the city of Cleveland and for the region. And it was cash for us, by the way. It wasn't like a lot of it was cash. So the $70 million we were able to pay, we're going to pay off over our lease. We're going to pay it off over 15 years. The other $45 million was cash out the door. So to tell you that our organization, was not in a position to accept the pandemic, I can't tell you how, painful this has been because we'd already spent all this cash. It's like buying something big and then you lose your job, right? I mean, that's not a good place to be. But we added an extension to the building on the front. We captured all this space that was out there originally, created this beautiful atrium, which you'll see more of. And what it allowed us to do was bring people into a much more, climate-friendly environment when you're coming in. It's Cleveland, Ohio. One thing about Cleveland is the weather changes every 10 minutes. But the other thing about Cleveland is it's right on the lake, right on a river, and right where we sit is one of the windiest places in Cleveland. And it gets snow every once in a while, and cold and all that stuff. And so we now can bring fans in. We get them through security quickly, and then they're in this atrium even before we open general gates to be able to let them in. So this is a big win for us and a big win for our fans. Look out to the atrium. We also wanted it to be iconic. We wanted to change the footprint and the impression of downtown Cleveland. Cleveland has seen a renaissance in the last 10 years that I've been here, and not because of me, even though I try to take some credit for it. it really has seen a renaissance. You probably don't know this, but Cleveland was one of the most richest cities between New York and Chicago, back in the 50s and early 40s, because all the big hitters, Rockefeller, Carnegie, they all lived in Cleveland. But when you get into the 90s and steel industry and the car industry, and over the last 20 some odd years, 30 years, Cleveland has seen a downflux in its per capita, and its amount of people. And so about 10 years ago, they really had some new leadership, and really had an investment. Our ownership group, Dan Gilbert, really invested in Cleveland. We've been starting to slowly build it back up. And it's seen a really good renaissance. So that's why it's really sad to see where we are right now, because obviously, we're in a stall mode. But we wanted to change the impression of downtown Cleveland. So we added that amazing atrium, which is, another 45,000 square feet of space for us, but just all glass and just welcoming, and brings you into the building and the building into the city, and really is just an iconic space for an iconic piece for downtown Cleveland. Did the audio play on that thing? Now give me a thumbs up if the audio worked.
Yes, it did.
All right, thank you. So, before we get there, I want to just mention a couple other things. So, for me personally, this was an important moment for my team because I was really extracted out of the day-to-day. We were going through MBA finals and obviously big concerts and other stuff, and And I was really engaged in this process for a number of years, where I was literally about the transformation day in and day out. That my team really had to, get into their own and learn how to be out there on their own, almost like a child riding a bike for the first time. This was a key moment for them, not for me, for them, because I had no choice but to say, whether I wanted to or not, the only way we were going to be successful is if I focused on this, was there to support them. But if I tried to worry about what was going on with the Cavs game or the Monsters game or the concert, I wouldn't be able to pay attention to this project. And so it was a really key moment for my team, and they handled it well. They were, extraordinary through very, very difficult circumstances, through, like I said, MBA finals runs, through, busy schedules, through changes in the schedule for us from a construction standpoint. But really, from about leadership, giving people the opportunity to grow, putting people in a position to be successful, was really what I'm most proud of when I look back on this project. In addition to, obviously the infrastructure and the brick and mortar. My dad, before he passed away, would shake my hand, would give me a handshake as I would come see him, and he would laugh and say, "Those hands haven't done a day's work in a while." And he's right, because I'm not literally working with my hands every day. His hands were very calloused. So, I've gotten to do a lot of small projects and certainly had some stuff at Stony Brook, but I finally got a chance to be part of something that no one could ever take away from me, which was, obviously being part of building this building. And even though I didn't put one screw in the wall, I'm really proud of the brick and mortar and the way the building came out. We have to change a lot of it, or at least are thinking about a lot of it right now when we think about COVID and where we are and how we're ultimately going to hopefully come back. One of the things we really worked on with this building was create this open environment where people can commingle and get together. And you've been to all these bars and restaurants now that have these tables that you can all sit out with people you don't even know. I assure you that that's not places that I like to go, because I don't like to sit with people I don't know. I don't even like to sit with people I do know. So we have to change a lot of that, or at least our thinking, at least for the time being, right? So just to give you the time frame, we opened up in September of 2019. So we opened up September 28th in 2019. So from that to March, we really haven't had a chance to really experience the building. I mean, we only had 5 months before we got the world shut down, and so it's sad that that's the case, but we don't get to choose it. I mean, it's what life threw us, and so now we're going through a process with architects, figuring out how we're going to get people in a new world, whether it be temperature checks or glass on all of our concession stands, which we just took out all the glass, we just took out all the barriers, we just took out all this stuff. I mean, it's incredulous that we have to go back and put this stuff back in to be able to operate, but we have no choice, because that's what the world threw us, and that's what we have to do. So adapting and adjusting and reading and reacting, that's leadership. And that's probably a good segue into the next thing.
Before we go into the leadership questions, I do have a question, well, actually 2 of them. What is your relationship with Aramark, being that is related to the retail operation or the venue operations? And then just about the pathway. So I was out in Cleveland last year for the MLB All-Star Game, and I know there's that pathway from the Renaissance Hotel through the mall, the casino and the mall, that eventually gets you to both Rocket Mortgage and to the Indians. I guess, what do you have to do to oversee that, if any at all?
Well, thank you for the question. So first of all, at Aramark, they're an unbelievable partner for us. We treat them as part of our team, which I think is key. We've always had. I can't take credit for it. The building's been open 27 years now. I've only been here for 10 of it. 25 years now. I've only been here for 10 of it. But they're a key aspect. So they were in every discussion about anything related to food service, or they oversee food service. We oversee our own retail. But they were involved in everything. They were involved in everything we're doing day to day. So Adam Zahn, who's their general manager on site, he's almost part of my team. He's on our weekly calls. We engage with them on a weekly basis. We we don't look at them as just the food service provider. They're part of our team, and it benefits us because we know what they're thinking. They know what we're thinking. They know how we like to see things. They know our level of expectation, and there's no surprises. And so, it doesn't mean we don't have challenges. We absolutely do. But I think getting them to be part of our team and making them feel part of that team, they'll work harder for you. They'll work harder. People want to work hard for people that know that that believe in them and trust them. And so we've tried to really engage them. So I hope that answers that question for you.
Yep, that was perfect.
And then that walkway is another example of a great situation for us where, obviously in Cleveland and inclement weather, and people like to park and then be able to take that walkway, or they can take mass transit into what's called Tower City and then walk over. It's actually owned by our we call RTA, which is our Regional Transportation Authority. They own the walkway leading up to where you get to as a set of escalators. And then our property starts there, and we're responsible for maintaining everything up from there. The problem that we have, going back to experience, is the RTA doesn't have any money. So that walkway needs some attention and some love. And so we knew that when we're building this building, that we didn't want to have that albatross sitting there. So we renovated a lot of the space all the way down to, which you probably didn't see because it wasn't done then, all the way down to the doors that hit the walkway. But at that point, we had to stop. At that point, it becomes their property holistically, and we need a partnership there. And unfortunately, if you ever dealt with any state or local authority, it's always difficult to get a partnership going on that level. So we're still working on figuring out how we can help them, clean up that walkway and make it much more user friendly and an experience. It could be an experience leading up to the ballpark and the arena. Could be all of that. It's not our property, and so we've struggled with it, to be honest with you.
Understood. Thank you for that as well.
Oof. What is leadership? I know I asked the question, the difference between management and leadership. And a lot of you, hopefully all of you, answered and provided your feedback, which I really appreciate. So we've compiled all of it into here, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot for a second because I need to catch a breath. And who's brave enough to tell me which one's theirs and why they believe what they believe? Start calling on people.
I'll go ahead with mine.
Great.
This is Steven. So I was trying to find it on the screen there, but I think I got it. So my response was to the left of the middle of the screen, and I wrote, in regard to your question between leadership and management, I think leadership is considered more transformational. Actually, I'm sorry, that one's not mine. The very first sentence was like word for word. Yeah, it's like the word for word, the same one. I'll pull it up from my email, actually, because I'm having a little bit of trouble finding it on the screen.
Well, just tell me what you feel, Stephen.
So, as it relates to the email I sent to you, I'll just kind of break it down. I believe leadership has more to do with inspiring the people on your team to achieve something. So I think leadership has more to do with getting people to follow you and kind of see a vision or a goal for where you're trying to go. Versus management, I think, is more about the day-to-day operational aspects of getting to that stated goal.
Hi, my name is Frank Diaz. Mine's in the top left corner. I think leadership is a person that leads by example. I think for me personally, I think a leader is a person who kind of just takes responsibility for all results, whether they're good or bad, versus management is more kind of, you do have, as a leader, you do have a team, but as a manager or in management, it's really broken down into everyone has specific, jobs, and it's more of, okay, this whole team accomplished a goal, if that makes sense.
Sure. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
So So there's a couple of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of authors when it comes to leadership, right? There's probably a million of them, I would say. Everyone has some sort of leadership principle, book, whatever. Peter Drucker and Ken Blanchard are two very famous authors in which they also developed a process called situational leadership, which is really about understanding what people are and then being able to get to, meet them where they are. That's in very broad strokes, but their philosophy, their understanding of what leadership is that it's your ability to influence a process of working with and through people to accomplish your organizational goals and outcomes. What does that mean? And look, leadership is a very personal thing. Okay? It's about you and about how you approach your world. And leadership is about who you are as a person, not just at the office, but in life in general. I work probably extra hard on that to make sure that I'm a good person at home as well as at the office. But you have to have both, right? You have to have management and you have to have leadership. So I've come to believe that management is about managing processes, right? You have to have processes. You have to have ways to do it. We talked earlier about events and execution of events and how that goes. Someone has to manage those processes, right? So Dom makes sure that security has the staffing structure. Dom makes sure that the lighting grid is laid out for the riggers who go up in the steel and drop it. He does all that. That's a process that he manages. But he also has to lead people. So you have to lead people. So you manage processes and you lead people. So he has to get people to buy into and work with, through them, to get what he needs done. I just explained to you that I didn't put one screw in the building, not one. But it was my job to make sure that we executed that project. We got it up, out of the ground, on time and on budget. I only did that by leading people. I only did that by managing process. We had a process. We had a small group of people that would review where we were from a budgetary standpoint week to week to week to week. And every Monday we would sit down and say, all right, what did we learn? Where are we at? Trending, $20 million over budget. Okay, we can't be there, so what do we need to cut? And that would lead into the next step, which was, okay, we're going to focus on this. We're going to focus on bathrooms. We're going to focus on this club or that club. And we're going to get into the detail, materiality, lighting, flooring, what's going on in there. And we're going to break it all down. We're going to get the contractors in. We're going to talk to them. We're going to do all, in that was the process. We managed that process. But I sat in the room and led the people. I drove the conversation. I drove to the outcome that I was trying to get to by getting us all aligned and moving us all in that direction. And that's why we were successful to get to where we were. So leadership is about leading people. Everything about leadership is about people. Manage processes and lead people. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that piece of it?
More so just a comment. What I think is interesting about what you just said is you don't really have to be the smartest person in every single area of the renovation. Your job is to bring the smartest people together and have them perform whatever specific thing they're good at to the highest degree. And it's like a skill to extract talent out of each individual department.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't have to be the expert in any of it. You have to have, you have to be knowledgeable enough to be dangerous in whatever, if you're leading any process, right? So you should understand at least a little bit of it. But I also think you have to be, people can tell when you're full of shit. Like people know when you're full of shit. So I've never tried to profess myself as an engineer or that I knew this or I knew that. But I did let them know that I knew what the hell I was talking about at some level and that I wasn't going to be, the wool wasn't going to be pulled over my eyes. But to your point, I made sure we had the right people in the room, the right engineers, the right facility architects, who was in the room, that I would go to them and say, is that right? And what's your opinion of it? Because I was not the smartest guy in the room, and it's not. And leadership is most times about not being the smartest person in the room and being quiet as much as you can and let the people around you do your talking. So that's exactly right, and I appreciate the comment. Anything else? Very passionate about leadership. Hopefully tell in the way I delivered that, because it's about people. So one thing as I wind down here is to leave you with is understanding that leadership today, specifically today's world, it involves a lot of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. We're all emotions, right? You'd be surprised how many hundreds and hundreds and thousands of emotions that go through you minute by minute. All different types of emotions, right? You have the anger, you have fear, there's all sorts of things that are going on in us, and it's our job to regulate it and put it in a positive direction. That's what emotional intelligence is. So through my career, I've had to work with some really difficult people. I've had bosses that were really, really difficult to deal with, both personally and professionally. And I'm made up, as again, I go back to who I always was, kid from Brooklyn, New York. I'm all emotion. I grew up in an emotional family. I grew up around a lot of emotional people. My infrastructure is built on emotion. And so I know that about myself, and I didn't do a really good job early on in my career, balance that emotion and understand it. I've worked really hard at it now to be self-aware, to understand that I come across a certain way, to understand, where I come from, like what I'm doing well, what I'm not doing well, how I'm making people feel. I'm really self-aware. And as a leader, you have to be self-aware. You have to know your strengths. You have to know your weaknesses. You have to know what drives you. You have to know your values. You have to understand the impact you have on others. In San Antonio, one of the things that I really didn't take seriously enough was the impact I had on other people. We went through a tough time there, and I oversee parking and transportation there. And back then, they weren't taking credit cards at parking lots, and it was all cash. Long story short, we had a lot of theft. We had people that were stealing money from us. And we wound up firing a bunch of people. And then one day, we just decided to switch gears and bring in a private company to help us manage the parking lot, which meant we had to fire 70 part-time people in one day. 70. So the next day, I come in the office. I didn't feel good about it, but I knew that there was something I had to do. Next day, I'm in the office, and the day after, I'm in the office, and then I start joking around. And I'd say to somebody, hey, you say that again, John, I'm going to fire your ass. And, in a joking way. And one day, the HR person calls me, and she has me come to her office. She's like, look, you cannot joke about firing people. I'm like, what? If you can't joke about firing people. I'm like, why not? She's like, because you actually fire people. It's not funny coming from you. You just literally let go of 70 people the other day. You can't run around joking around that you're going to fire people. It's not funny. I had no clue the impact I had on other people, how that impacted them when I said it. I thought I was joking. Because I was the boss, they laughed at me. They laughed at the joke, right? At least I thought they did. You don't know your impact you have on other people. And being able to control that, redirecting it, especially when you're upset or aggravated, nothing good comes from it. I'm sure you've heard count to 10 and all these other things. But what motivates you? Right? Like, is it your own achievement? Is it achievement of your team? Is it achievement of your family? Is it your kids? What's motivating you every day? And then empathy. You have to understand people. You have to understand what people are going through. If anything has taught us anything over the last few weeks is that we really need to understand what people of color deal with day in and day out. We've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. And I thought that I was this, well-rounded individual that knew everything about people. And I grew up in a pretty diverse environment and all this stuff. But I didn't know half the stuff that some of my colleagues who are African-American go through day to day. We had a call right after the George Floyd incident with our entire organization, including our head coach who's black and our general manager who's black. And there's a lot of us on this call, and people started sharing their own stories. Here are guys who are successful, and there are guys that have done well in their careers. And because they're African American, when they get home from a team trip off the plane, or they leave a game after the arena, they have to reach over and get their wallet and take out their ID and their registration and put it in their visor because they're afraid to reach for something if they get pulled over. I don't have to worry about that. I never worried about that. So I had to have empathy and understand what people are going in that situation. I have to recognize the emotional makeup that makes them up day in and day out. So as a leader, I have a wide group of people that report into me. So as a leader, I have to be empathetic and then ultimately be able to build rapport with people and understand people and get to know them. You're not going to get to know everybody. You're not going to have, and it's okay. You don't have to know everybody. You don't have to be, you know, the expert in Blair or Amanda. You just have to know, they have to know that you care. You have to know that you care. So what are ways that you care? You can say hello when you see them. You can engage them. If you haven't seen them in a while and you think about them, drop them a note. I have everybody's birthdays on my calendar. Every day I have a birthday that I have to write somebody a happy birthday for. Just little things that you can do from a leadership perspective that get people to understand that you care. So I've worked really hard on my emotional intelligence. I'm working really hard to understand how to self-regulate, be self-aware, and be motivated, you know, and be empathetic. I think I was predisposed to be empathetic because of my mother and the way she operated. But I really have worked hard to even be closer, more empathetic to those around me and understand what they're going through. So that's all I have for you. So I want to take the last couple of minutes just really engaging any of you that have any questions about your own journey or anything that I've covered. And again, my hope is that you just take one thing from this and it helps you, you know, when you're personally or professionally or any other way. I'm extremely humbled to be standing here in front of you today. It was a very difficult, you know, feel for me. I'm used to seeing emotion in faces and people smiling and laughing or rolling their eyes at my bad jokes or any of that stuff. And it's hard to do that in this environment. So hopefully you felt I delivered, you know, what you were looking for over the last 2 hours. So with that, I will shut up and ask, the floor is now yours.
I'm sure we have a bunch of questions.
Nobody's got any career advice or anything they want?
Andy, I just had a question about, I work in premium for the Washington Nationals, so I have a little bit more of an interest in that aspect of what you do. And I was reading through, when you were going through your slides on the reimagined suites, what exactly was done with the renovation at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse on those? Were there already existing suites that were updated, or were they built completely from scratch?
No, we had 80 suites. We actually were way over suited for our market. So we actually converted a lot of spaces, a lot of suites into other types of clubs. We created these theater boxes, which are 4-seaters out of about 20 suites. And really what it is you have 4 seats in front, really high-end seats, and then you have a table behind you that you can, that's your table, and then you have a buffet that you can experience. So that was one of the things we created up on our, we have 2 club levels. We have an upper level and lower level. We were one of the first buildings, the GUM was one of the first buildings ever to have 2-level suites. Suites that low to the court. And so we reimagined all of our suites, and happy to you have my email. You're welcome to email me. We have more specific decks that I'm happy to share with you, and happy to answer that question even more fully than I just did.
Did you have, just a quick follow-up on that, did you have involvement in terms of how they design any of the building when they're going through the renovation? Are you getting a little bit of a say in that, or is it more operational on your end, just making sure things are getting done on budget and on time?
No, I was part of everything. I was responsible for all of it because every action has a reaction, right? So no offense to salespeople, but you guys all want the world, and they want high-end terrazzo, and they want high-end this and high-end that. And my job was to make sure that we got you what you needed, but also did it in a budgetary way. And whether it was fake stone or something that we could put into a plan, it didn't have to be this marble and granite where nobody was going to actually touch it. So those are the types of things that we got into. But I was fortunate enough. My organization put me in charge and said nothing happens on the project without my teams and my input. So I was responsible for all of it, from digital to suites to premium which is the same thing to all of it, all across the board. And I think earlier we talked about, surrounding myself with smarter people to make sure we made the right decision.
Thank you.
So pre-COVID, there was, I guess the Oakland A's started this and some other people started this. The big thing was to rip out seats in stadiums, like suites and what have you, to make general population areas where people can network and not be confined to a seat. That's the latest way of attracting people, right? Not making them sit in a specific seat for the entire game, but letting them congregate. I think at the Oakland Coliseum they call it the treehouse. The A's pissed off a lot of the Oakland Raiders season ticket holders when they were there because they were doing away with a lot of seats. I noticed you were mentioning you ripped up a lot of seats in the upper level there, out suites, to make some general party areas. Are you cringing now, or are your marketing people cringing now that that's probably not going to be the way it is, until we get some type of vaccine or something more definitive with this corona thing, as far as people just getting together and hanging out next to each other at a bunch of drink rails?
Yeah, I don't think we're cringing yet, Jim. It's up on our upper level. So what we did was took out 3 sections of seating up in what we call the Budweiser Brew House. And I know the video is fast with it, but it's up in the Budweiser Brew House. You can go to RocketMortgageFieldhouse.com and see photos of it. Took out 3 sections of seating. The seating was behind stage, so we knew for concerts we don't use it for a lot of concerts. And obviously it's the higher end seats, the highest of the building. Even in our NBA Finals runs, we still had rows of empty seats up there. And the other good thing was that Budweiser sponsored it, and they were great. They were nice enough to put my initials up there. I don't know if you saw it, to the AB. We think it's one of our most popular spaces, and we think that obviously it's coming back from this. We're hopeful that it'll still be one of our places. We're prepared for, in the new COVID world, to not be at 100% capacity anyway. So we're understanding that everything's going to suffer, not just that. So we're not cringing yet, Jim, but who knows what happens, in a year from now.
Thank you.
Hi, Anthony. So you spoke a little bit about the Spurs core values earlier on. What are some of the Cavs, core values, and how you go about things there?
Yeah, great question. It's actually something I've struggled with personally, because Dan Gilbert, who owns Quicken Loans and is our primary owner, has these principles that he created in his business. He calls them his isms. And what that means is he has this rules that he has in his business that are really business principles that always raising the level of our awareness, having a sense of urgency. The inches are all around us. So that's one of my favorites, because people are always looking for the Hail Mary pass and the big play. If you played any sport or you fool around with your friends, you don't want to throw the little lateral pass, or you don't want to volley over to over the net just nice and easy. You want to slam it. You want to go for the big shot. And what Dan tries to teach us is every inch gets us across the line. Every inch moves us forward. So responding to people's emails. Hopefully I responded to all of yours. I mean, that's a principle for us, that we respond, that we do what we say we're going to do. Innovation is applauded, execution is rewarded. Meaning that it's great to have all these innovative ideas, but you got to execute. You got to do it. So we don't necessarily work off a core value system, but we have these principles that we operate within that are pretty impactful and pretty important how we go day to day. There's a lot of them. I think there's 27 of them, so it's hard to remember them all. But really, there's some really key ones there I just mentioned that drive our principles and our thinking every day.
Awesome, thank you.
So we've been talking a lot about mixed-use development and people, building arenas and stadiums in blighted areas and what have you. And, obviously there's a great example of when they built Jacobs Field, a progressive field. Years ago, they redid the flats, that nightclub area and everything else. But more recently, the Padres have actually built in, right in where their stadium is, the gas lamp district. It was the last undeveloped area, blighted area of San Diego. With this renovation now, and I'm sure you would have mentioned if there was there anything done on the outside? I know you mentioned about the walkways there to the stadium and to the arena, but was there any other real estate involvement or development of areas around the arena as part of this project, or is that something completely different?
Yeah, it's not part of the project, but there's absolutely plans for the area around us. Matter of fact, across the street there's a surface parking lot that, it's been hitting some snags, and certainly with COVID it's going to hit more. But with a big office tower with retail stores and restaurants was planned for that site. And then our ownership group through Dan Gilbert owns a number of buildings in downtown Cleveland. He just spent hundreds of millions of dollars renovating a number of them and building back the downtown core. So development is all around us. We play a big role in it because of the economic impact we have for downtown Cleveland. And so a lot of that is in process. As I said, that's part of why I'm a little, not a little part of, but I'm saddened that I think some of that's going to obviously drag a little bit now because of, where we are. But my guess is Cleveland is a lot different 5 years from now than it is right now. And I'm talking about just like physically, because the people that are gearing up these projects are very committed to actually making them happen.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. Couple more?
I have a question. This is Amanda. When it comes to leadership, I know you said you're really passionate about it. I'm under the impression and the belief that you don't have to be someone of high rank in an organization to be a leader and show leadership. So I'm just interested to see your thoughts and advice on someone who, like many of us, are entry-level employees, or in my situation, I'm one of the younger employees in my department, and how to go about that.
Great question, Amanda. Thank you. You're absolutely right. Leadership is not about title. Leadership is about people and about who you are as a person. And I can't remember who I can't give the author credit, so I apologize, but there's a famous quote about if you're going to be, and I think it was either Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan, and that if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best damn street sweeper you can possibly be. If you're going to be a window washer, be the best window washer you can possibly be. My point is, be the best that you can be in where you are right now. Focus on being great at your current role. People will notice. I know that we all think that people don't notice and that things won't happen for us, and I gotta make sure that I connect with this person. Sure, you can do all that, but none of it really matters if you're not becoming the best at what you're doing. My advice would be great at what you're doing. Be good to the people you're working with. Be good to the people that are working around you. Life has a way of humbling all of us, and it comes back to kick us in the ass. And true story, when I first got here, there was a young guy, and he and I had this connection with you remember the guy I said, Greg Economo, the young sales guy here who, Greg said, you got to meet my guy, Nick. You got to meet my guy, Nick, when you get to Cleveland. He reached out, and I came in as a vice president. Nick was the director of sales. Remember, vice president, director. That was 10 years ago. Today, Nick is my boss. So think about how things are different if 10 years ago I treated him like shit. 10 years ago I made him feel bad. I probably wouldn't be here. Right? So I didn't do it because I knew one day he was going to be my boss. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. So leadership is about people and about treating people right and about doing the right things and being the best version of who you are day in and day out. It's not about titles. Well, I appreciate your question, and I hope I answered yours.
Yep, thank you.
We really get into in the intro class the different types of leadership, and especially the two types of being an elected or selected leader and also an informal leader, which you've referred to a lot as going forward. It's not always the person that's elected the captain, but maybe somebody else on the team that for whatever reason, their charisma, their attitude, the way they treat people, the way they interact people, is that people are attracted to them, and they don't have to be selected and not high up on the food chain. They're just there, and people go to them because of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look, I'll let you guys, let you guys off the hook. No more questions. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to leave you with one last tidbit. And know that I'm not going away forever. If you know how to get in touch with me, I can help you. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm here. But I've talked a lot about people. I've talked a lot about caring. And I assure you that this next little tidbit is paramount to me, and what I try to drive for my team day to day is that people forget what you say. People forget what you did. People never forget how you make them feel. So let that sit with you, and I hope that you take it seriously and understand that the people around you, are going to respond to you regardless of what you think, and that you try every day to make people feel great. And in turn, that you will feel great yourself, and then when you feel great, you're able to accomplish great things. So I wish you all the best in your individual journeys and collective journey through this class. Life is crazy. I met Jim a long time ago, and he broke my chops a lot, and never thought I'd earn his respect enough that he would invite me to be part of this class. So even a kid from Brooklyn can figure it out. So thank you again for your time and your attention and your preemptive work that I asked you to do, and I hope that you got a little bit something out of this.
I don't know if you remember this. I think your first presentation for IABM was at a conference or a crowd management seminar or something, and I asked you to be on it, and you did it. And you did a tremendous job, and you impressed a lot of people on that. And then going forward from there, yeah, but basically because, where you were from, where you came from with Stony Brook and who you knew, that was the way we did things back in New York in those days. It was a major chop-busting situation, but got to know you professionally and followed your career, and we've been separated physically for a while, but I never forget being at those IABM conferences, or as you say, IAM back then, and you did a great job on the panels that we used to run, and it was awesome, and it's great to see. You really need to get involved in regular teaching. You should look into Cleveland State or something like that and tell them to start researching and a little bit, and let some practitioners into their program there.
No, I agree. Well, I don't agree on me, but I agree that they should do that. But thank you again, Jim, for the opportunity. And again, I wish you guys all the best. And I'm here if you need me.
Okay. Thanks, Anthony. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.